They spit in your food. For words scribbled on a folded napkin. For the billionaire CEO sitting undercover in his own five-star restaurant, it was more than an insult. It was a declaration of war. He came to investigate quiet rumors of racism, but what he found was a deep-seated sickness hiding behind fine china and southern charm. And the quiet waitress who risked everything to hand him that note had just lit the fuse on an explosion that would burn an entire system to the ground. Marcus Thorne didn't come to the Magnolia House for the $700 steak. He came for the truth. Dressed in a simple hoodie and worn-out sneakers, he was there to investigate an anonymous letter that had landed on his desk, a letter detailing racially biased service and disturbing kitchen practices at the Charleston restaurant his company had acquired a year ago. He had to see it for himself, without any of the fanfare that came with his name. From the moment he walked in, he knew the letter hadn't been lying. He was seated by a noisy service door, ignored for 10 minutes, and watched as the manager glad-handed every white patron in the room while looking straight through him. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To build an empire and still be judged by the hoodie you wear. It's a reminder that some people will never see the man, only the stereotype. Then came the note, delivered by a waitress named Aria. Her eyes held a quiet fear, but her hands were steady. She didn't ask for help. She just armed him with the truth. And that truth was about to crack open a polished and poisonous world. This isn't just a story about a restaurant. It's a story about the courage it takes to whisper the truth in a room full of people shouting lies. Marcus Thorne was a man who had built a billion-dollar empire on discipline and data. A tech prodigy raised by his grandmother in Alabama, he'd fought his way from a church donation computer to a penthouse overlooking Central Park. But success never erased the memory of being underestimated, of having to be twice as good to get half as far. So when the letter arrived, he didn't send a team of lawyers. He bought a bus ticket and walked into the fire himself. No one at the Magnolia House recognized him, and that was the point. He was just a black man in a hoodie, a perfect test case for the system he unknowingly owned. The Magnolia House was the epitome of Southern exclusivity, a restored mansion where the walls were lined with portraits of Confederate generals, and the air was thick with the scent of old money and entitlement. The hostess sized him up and down before reluctantly seating him at the worst table in the house. The manager, a man named Mr. Sterling with slicked back hair and a practiced smile, never once made eye contact with him. The restaurant wasn't failing. It was operating exactly as it was designed to, a private club masquerading as a public establishment. Aria moved through the dining room with a quiet efficiency born of necessity. She was halfway through a law degree at Howard University when her mother got sick, and the mountain of medical bills forced her to drop out and move back home to Charleston. This job paid the bills, but the atmosphere was suffocating. She was the only black waitress on the floor, constantly scheduled for double shifts and given the worst sections. She'd learned to swallow the casual racism, the whispers from the kitchen, the condescending tone from Mr. Sterling. She wore her smile like a suit of armor. But tonight felt different. The man at table 14 was quiet, observant. When she took his order, he looked her in the eye, a small act of recognition that felt monumental in a place that worked so hard to make her feel invisible. When he ordered the presidential prime, a $700 Wagyu steak, she felt Mr. Sterling's eyes boring into her from across the room. The unspoken rule was clear. For an order that big from a customer who looked like that, she was supposed to get a credit card up front. She didn't. She trusted her gut and overrode the manager's approval prompt on the computer. It was a small act of rebellion, but it was hers. She had seen a lot of ugly things in that kitchen, but what she saw next was a point of no return. As the expensive steak sizzled on the grill, the head chef, a man named Anton known for his racist jokes, leaned over the meat with a sneer. He looked around, then spat directly onto the steak before flipping it over. A line cook standing nearby chuckled. In a moment like that, silence is a choice. You can choose the safety of looking away, or you can choose the terrifying risk of doing what's right. Her whole life had been about survival, but maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she was meant for. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a clean linen napkin and her server's pen. They spit in your food. This place is not safe. Asked to see the kitchen cameras. She folded it tightly and slipped it into her apron. A moment later, the steak was plated. Her heart pounded as she walked it to the table, placed it in front of Marcus and whispered, Enjoy your meal, sir. As she cleared his bread plate, her other hand slid the folded napkin under the edge of his placemat. She was gone before he could react, leaving only the quiet hope that her message had found the right person. Marcus sat perfectly still, the untouched steak cooling in front of him. Something in Aria's posture, the urgency in her fleeting glance, had warned him. He unfolded the napkin. The words were a gut punch. It wasn't the act itself that chilled him, it was the phrase, "This place is not safe." That spoke to a deeper rot. Aria wasn't just warning him about a meal. She was exposing a culture. He pushed the plate away, took out a burner phone, and sent a coded message to his security chief in New York. Red flag. Pull kitchen camera backups for tonight. Quietly. Then he stood and approached the manager. "I'd like to speak with you privately," Marcus said, his voice calm but cold. In his office, Mr. Sterling launched into a polished speech about customer satisfaction. Marcus cut him off. "I'd like to see the kitchen camera footage from the last 30 minutes. Sterling's smile evaporated. He stammered about privacy and inventory control, but Marcus didn't blink. "I'm giving you one chance," Marcus said, his tone shifting. "You can either be the man who helps me fix this, or the man who tried to hide it." When Sterling hesitated, asking who he was, Marcus leaned in. "I'm the man who signs your checks. And if you lie to me again, it will be your last one." The manager, now pale and sweating, pulled up the footage. And there it was. A clean 2-minute gap, right when the steak had been prepared. The footage had been deleted. "Enough," Marcus said. He sent one more text to his team. "Footage tampered with. Preserve all files." He looked at the manager. "Go home," he said. "And I suggest you call a lawyer." Back in his hotel suite, Marcus opened the files his team had already recovered from the restaurant's cloud servers. The raw, uncut footage Mr. Sterling thought was gone. And there it was. The spit. The sneer. The ugly words from the chef. "That's what you get for acting like you belong here." It wasn't a moment of bad judgment. It was a system of hate served with a side of plausible deniability. The rage Marcus felt was cold and precise. They hadn't just insulted a customer. They had desecrated his own house. The next morning, Aria walked into work expecting to be fired. Instead, the hostess told her to go to the manager's office. She opened the door and found Marcus still in his hoodie waiting for her. "I own this place," he said simply. "I saw the real footage. I know what you did." Aria braced herself. "Am I fired?" she asked, her voice trembling. He shook his head. "Not by me. In fact, I'm here to offer you a choice." He leaned forward. "You can walk away from all of this. I'll pay for the rest of your law degree, find you a new job, anything you need. Or," he paused, "you can stay. Stay and help me burn this version to the ground and rebuild it from the ashes." As the new director of ethics and culture, power isn't just about tearing things down. Real power is about seeing the potential in someone else and giving them the tools to build something better. He didn't just see a waitress, he saw a leader. In that moment, for the first time in a long time, Aria took a full deep breath. By noon, the Magnolia House was no longer a restaurant. It was the center of a media storm. Marcus moved with the precision of a general. His legal team flew in, and plainclothes federal agents walked into the kitchen and escorted Chef Anton, Mr. Sterling, and the line cook out in handcuffs. On the front steps, in front of a growing crowd of reporters, Marcus stood at a podium. He didn't shout. He spoke with cold, hard facts. He laid out the systemic rot he had uncovered and condemned it without hesitation. Then he gestured to Aria, who stood beside him. "This woman," Marcus said, his voice ringing with conviction, "showed more integrity in one night than many executives show in a lifetime. She is the reason we are here today, and she will be the reason this establishment has a future." The restaurant closed for 2 months. When it reopened, the Confederate portraits were gone, replaced by works from celebrated Black artists from the Charleston area. The staff was new, diverse, and led by managers who reflected the community. And in the office that once belonged to Mr. Sterling, Aria Brooks, the new director of ethics and culture, was holding mandatory bias training. She had also re-enrolled in law school, nights and weekends, on a full scholarship from her new boss. She was no longer just serving food, she was serving justice. The story isn't about the arrests or the headlines. It's about the fact that one person with no power and no title saw something wrong and chose to act. She didn't have a platform. She had a napkin, and she passed the truth to someone who was willing to listen. That single act of quiet courage was enough to bring an empire of hate to its knees and begin the hard work of building something better in its place. If this story reminds you that integrity is a superpower, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true stories that matter. And ask yourself, what injustice have you seen and stayed quiet about? The world doesn't always change with a roar. Sometimes all it takes is a whisper.